Good morning. My name is Erin Clapper. On behalf of Superintendent Hoffmeister and the State Department of Education, I would like to welcome you to today's webinar to reach out to the State PAC meeting. And we also have a couple of guest presenters today for you all that we'll get to in a little bit. One is Petra Woodard from the Executive Director of Counseling and Policy Implementation here at the State Department, as well as Blaire Harrison, Behavior Specialist, School Climate Transformation here at the State Department as well. Ms. Woodard would be talking about graduation requirements, an overview of that, and Ms. Harrison would be talking about trauma-informed training. And so those are two kind of hot topics right now in the world of education. So we wanted to bring that to you all as well. And but first of all, we also have Jose Henriquez, the state recruiter for the migrant program here. And he is going to introduce the state PAC officers and open the meeting.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to another meeting. I want to introduce our serving state PAC officers, and they are Esteban Barrera, is our president. Is he present?
Yes.
He's there. Hello, Mr. Barrera.
Hello. How are you?
Also, I want to introduce Roberto Cervantes, our vice president. Is he there?
Not able to be here today.
All right, that's good. Maria Cervantes, our secretary.
She's here, she's coming.
Oh, we just want to say thank you for serving this year. And also, I just want to remind you about the duties. Oh, hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for being there.
Okay, thank you.
See, our state PAC officer, I'm sorry, they have the duties to serve for the migrant program on the basis of, like the president will begin and end each state PAC meeting, and in general will be responsible for providing leadership for the state PAC. The vice president will replace the president in case when he or she is absent. Our secretary should take minutes during all the state PAC meetings. It can be in Spanish, it doesn't matter, we just need something. Also, as stated here, our president, Mr. Barrera, will begin our meeting. Mr. Barrera?
Yes. Yes. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting. I hope everybody enjoy it. Thank you. And then this meeting I'll call opening. You hear me?
Right after the Gene incident, you're no longer invited.
Did you call the meeting to order?
Yeah.
Sorry, we couldn't hear. Okay, thank you so much. We'll move forward then with, thank you very much for your service.
Okay.
All right, we just wanted to first start just the general overview of the PAC meeting itself and the migrant education purpose, just to keep that in mind as we move through this next school year, the school year that we're in, and why we're doing what we're doing. There's 5 basic purposes in the law. 1, to assist states in supporting high quality and comprehensive educational program and services during the school year and summer and intersession that address the unique educational needs of migratory children. 2, to ensure that migratory children who move among the states are not penalized in any manner by disparities among the states in curriculum, graduation requirements, and challenging state academic standards. 3, to ensure that migratory children receive full and appropriate opportunities to meet the same challenging state academic standards that all children are expected to meet. 4, to help migratory children overcome educational disruption cultural and language barriers, social isolation, various health-related problems, and other factors that inhibit the ability of children to succeed in school. And 5, to help migratory children benefit from the state and local systemic reforms. Section 1304 of ESEA requires state education agencies such as ourselves and local operating agencies would be, the local agency would be the districts, to establish and consult with PACs in planning and operating the migrant education program and projects of 1 school year in duration. In particular, the state and local operating agencies must consult with the PAC about a couple of things: design of the comprehensive needs assessment of migratory children to be served, and the design of the service delivery plan. The migrant education overall program goal, of course, is to have all migrant students graduate with a high school diploma or completed GED that prepares them for responsible citizenship, further learning, and productive employment. The PAC, or Parental Involvement Council, is a federal requirement, as we just went over. Each migrant local education or the district will organize a PAC and have at least 2 local PAC meetings during the school year, and the state PAC officers serve for 2 years. The representative of each LEA PAC will attend 2 state meetings per year via webinar like we're doing today. Parental involvement plays a big significant role in the academic achievement of their children. All Title I programs, including the Migrant Education Program, require parental involvement because it's proven to help students perform better in school. Through participation in the planning of the Migrant Education Program, migrant parents are more likely to become advocates and supporters of the program because they have a personal stake in its success. Involving migrant parents in the planning of the Migrant Education Program also builds their capacity to assist in their students' learning at home. The goals of the Migrant PAC program are to provide parents with the knowledge and skills needed to be an effective advocate for their child, to provide parents with opportunities to have a choice in the Migrant Education Program, and to provide parents with opportunities to offer support to school programs. The functions of the PAC are to advise the local education agency or the district on concerns of migrant parents that relate to the planning, operation, and evaluation of the migrant education program which their children participate. And the local PAC advises the Oklahoma Migrant Education Program at the state PAC meetings, such as today, held at least twice per year. The PAC eligibility and membership, we have that should be a majority of migrant parents or guardians. The parents or guardians of eligible migrant children and individuals who represent the interests of such parents are eligible to serve as PAC members. Selection methods may include election, volunteering, nominations, or appointments. Other PAC members may include district personnel who represent the interests of such parents. For example, directors, coordinators, parent liaisons, recruiters, etc. Some local meeting topic ideas for when you have your local fall and spring meetings could be requests for information regarding career techs, information regarding parental GED or educational classes, requests for information regarding college preparation, resources available via the Oklahoma Public Libraries, and guest speakers such as that we have today. For instance, if you chose the career tech as a topic for your local meeting, they offer a variety of services and educational opportunities for Oklahomans ranging from 6th grade students to senior citizens as far as classes go. And regardless of the age, the skill level, or career, Oklahoma Career Techs will prepare you to succeed in the workplace, in education, and in life. Some career tech or technology centers here around the state: Northeast Technology Center, Western Technology Center, Kiamichi Technology Center, Indian Capital Technology Center, in relation to where our migrant education programs are located. Indian Capital Technology Center, Southwest Technology Center, Great Plains Technology Center, and High Plains Technology Center. The Oklahoma Department of Libraries, there's their website there. And some things that they can offer is navigate literacy resources. For adults, they can offer tutor training programs, English ESL classes, immigration and citizenship services. For kids and young adults, they can offer reading programs. Like for instance, they have a read to dog program, which is kind of fun for kids, and reading activities for parents. Is there any questions related to anything that we've gone over? There should be a chat box there if you do have anything as we go along with my presentation or any of the other two presentations that you'll be hearing as well. Okay. Next, we're going to hear from Petra Woodard from the Executive Director of Counseling to speak with us about graduation requirements overview. He'll switch it.
Help her.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully I will grab the right one. Yours is this one right here, right? If it doesn't look familiar when we start, we can change again. And you should just be able to advance here. When we get to your link, just hit the link with the mouse.
Okay. Well, good morning. My name is Petra Woodard. I am the Executive Director of Academic Counseling for the state of Oklahoma, Department of Education. I work out of the Student Support Services Office that includes counseling, college and career readiness, work-based learning, and industry engagement, and also prevention services under the supervision of Deputy Superintendent Dr. Shelley Ellis. I'm honored to be here today with you to share our state's graduation requirements. So thank you, Erin and Jose, for extending the invitation to join today's PAC meeting. A brief overview of what we will discuss includes the why, the what, and the how of graduation requirements in the state of Oklahoma. We will cover a bit of legislation. We will talk about course requirements and other requirements, and also how to get an A if your student is transitioning from school to school or state to state, just having an awareness, acknowledging any roadblocks, accepting partnerships, attaining with your school personnel, attaining any records, and accessing any resources that will be useful to you and your student. So the why, of course, Erin has already covered this with the Title I Part C of Migrant Education Program, but I also wanted to highlight how that ties into what we are doing with our students as far as graduation in our department, because it is about their graduation requirements and making sure that students are not penalized, and having an awareness of what is expected is going to be so crucial in making sure that our students leave high school with a high school diploma or some type of equivalency. It's all about preparing them to be responsible citizens and furthering their learning and gaining productive employment. Our Oklahoma Edge and our ESSA plan for the state, I just wanted to highlight this slide as well. We do have a goal of 100% of students in grades 6 through 12 having an individual career and academic plan as they graduate. And so just being aware of that, 100%. And that includes, we had 364, I believe, migrant students last year recorded, and we want them to also be a part of this process and make sure they have a plan towards graduation. So I'm excited to be here today to make sure that you are aware of that new legislation and how it's going to help you in tracking your students' progress towards college and career readiness. So what are the graduation requirements? Oklahoma is a compulsory attendance state, and so students are required from ages 5 to 18 to go to school. Once they get to high school, they are automatically enrolled in the college prep work ready curriculum, which requires 23 units. And on the slide, you will see that there are 4, and you can just say these are years. A unit, 4 years of English, 3 math, 3 science, 3 history and citizenship skills, which includes Oklahoma history, 2 of the same foreign language, or 2 years of technology. And also students have to get an additional unit from the above approved courses And that also includes any AP or IB courses a student may take, or concurrent enrollment. If a student junior or senior year decides to take concurrent enrollment, that will also count for their 1 additional unit. They also have to have 1 fine arts credit. That could be dance or drama, or just art, 6 elective other units to total 23, from PE to any other elective that that particular school requires. So that is the college prep curriculum. If we do have students who are not going to be on the college prep curriculum, but they want to just enter the workforce right after high school, or maybe just transition to career tech, maybe their career path does not require them to attend university to get any additional certifications, then we have a core pathway option also that totals 23 units. The major difference between the core and college prep would be in the math area, because it can also include computer science or a 1 year of an approved 3-hour career tech program could count for a math credit in lieu of a math credit. And for science, students can also take agriculture, technology, or an approved STEM course for their science requirement. And this is especially important to note as schools offer different types of coursework. It makes it easy to combine requirements that students can have to meet that, other than the course prescribed at a certain school district. Also, they have cut down that they only have to have 1 year of the technology or foreign language instead of 2. And so that's also helpful as students move from school to school. If this option is chosen, it has to be opted out of the college prep curriculum. So there is a letter that has to be obtained from the school and completed. And a meeting has to be held with school officials in order for that option. And this is an option that is very valuable. It's not saying a student won't meet the college prep requirements, but if this option is taken, it reduces the stress of a student having to have 2 foreign language. Say they started Spanish in one school district, and then they move to the eastern part of the state, and that school does not offer Spanish, but they offer French or some other language. The requirement is 2 of the same language. So this helps alleviate one of those barriers in the language requirements. If you have any questions, please feel free to type those in, and I'll stop and explain anything that I can, or we can wait until the end and I will answer all questions. So those are the main 2 graduation pathways that we have here in the state. I wanted to show you what schools use. We won't look at this version, it's all skewed out, but this is the graduation checklist that counselors will use to track a student's progress. And I'll just take you to the site and let you see what the actual form looks like. It is totally fillable. And so today is my husband's birthday, so we'll just use him. He graduated, I think. We were in the same class. Of course, I had a higher rank, but that's okay. And let's say they want to be an IT specialist. Students can type in this form, counselors can type in this form, or you can print it and monitor and keep up with your own graduation requirements and the grades that you're making in each of these classes. This form also allows you to put the specific courses that you opted to take in addition to the required courses that are listed. There are also links to the legislation, to the State Department's curriculum page, where you will find all of these subject areas. And those departments have developed FAQs for frequently asked questions and more specific information about course requirements in that subject area. This will take you to all of the subject codes. So these are all of the approved courses in the state of Oklahoma. And there's also, and that's all the way from pre-K 12 and also to the career tech courses. There's a link for that as well. On the other side of this form, these are the other requirements for graduation, which includes your assessment requirement. Students in grades 11 will take either the ACT or the SAT, whichever instrument that district has chosen. And they will also take a science assessment. Now, the ACT includes a science component, but there is an additional science assessment that students will take that is required by the state, along with the U.S. history assessment. And this one is only taken once during high school. Let's say student took U.S. history in 10th grade, then they can take that assessment. They just have to have taken it before they graduate. There is also a personal financial literacy passport that a student has to have. And I will go over in detail a little bit more about that, and the CPR AED requirement that students have to have before they graduate. In this area, students can track any certificates or endorsements that they gain as a part of a particular program, particularly in a career tech. And starting with this year's freshmen, this is the group that has to have an ICAP, which is an individual career academic plan. And schools and students and families can track what the career assessment that student has taken it. They have to revisit that every year. They have to look at their career goal every year and make sure that the courses the students are taking reflect whatever that career goal is for that student. So we're moving away from students going to school in 9th grade and ending up 12th grade, and they have no idea what they want to do. The workforce is wanting us to prepare our students to be able to enter the workforce ready, which is why this is a work-ready curriculum. Any type of service learning or work-based learning experiences the student has can be entered here. If they do an internship for 6 weeks at any type of company, the student can put in, I did my internship. And they would have met that requirement only having done that in the 11th grade, or they could have gone to a career fair. In 9th grade, and they would have met that requirement. Or they can do something every year or several things every year. The object is that they participate in at least one activity during grades 9 through 12 for college and for career exposure. So that is the form. I wanted to be able to walk you through that. It covers all of the requirements. So more in detail about what personal financial literacy means. It does not mean a student has to have that class. It means that they must pass 14 competencies that are outlined by the state. And there is a particular passport that students are created when they start to cover these competencies that is part of their permanent record. And I bring this out, so that needs to be one of the things that is requested if you withdraw from a school once they've started in 9th grade. It's not a course, even though some schools have a course, which is great. But completion of this passport is posted to a student's transcript. CPR and the AED, they don't have to have a CPR certified course and their card carrying member. What the statute says is that students are required to have instruction in cardiopulmonary resuscitation and the use of an automated defibrillator. And so that can be done by connecting with your local health agencies to come out and do a presentation. Or students can actually get this through career tech programs and show their card, and that would count. And this is a requirement that students can opt out of. So you would just visit with your school counselor, and there's a form for that as well. And this requirement is posted to your CPR, to your transcript as well. Now for the ICAP, there are basically 6 main things that we're tracking as part of the ICAP. None of this in particular is posted to a student's transcript per se, but career and college interest surveys, students have to do that every year. They have to have their written post-secondary and workforce goals, and also be intentional about the coursework that they're taking. Academic progress, of course, that will be tracked on their report cards and transcript already, and any scores on college and career readiness assessments like the ACT or the ACT will be printed. And experience in, as I said before, those service learning and or work-based environment activities has to be monitored and participated in grades 9 through 12. So how to navigate through this, having an awareness of just what is expected at each grade level is so important. Just to know, if my student is a middle schooler, these type of activities are going on in their school. They're getting introduced to the ICAP. They're talking about state assessments. Their counselors are visiting their classrooms. There are exploration activities. So if your student is not in school, know that these are some of the activities that are going on, and we have resources for that student to still participate in these things during moments of transition. If they're in the 8th grade, you're talking about actual transition plans, specifically what courses will be required for them to take as a freshman. So updating that ICAP annually and making sure that you're being purposeful about planning the high school enrollment. And visiting any career techs, promoting the ACT, these type of activities are going on, and getting the Oklahoma's Promise application in if students qualify for that. So just being aware. So if I go to a school in the 9th grade, I need to know, I'm gonna be expected to know what kind of coursework do I need my student to take in the 11th grade based on their career path, because maybe they need to make sure and take biology as a freshman if they want to go into a certain career tech field. Or they've already taken Algebra 1 in middle school. I need to make sure and communicate that to the high school that they transition to, because sometimes those credits don't automatically go over from 8th grade to 9th grade if they're going to a different district. So that's why that is important, to understand these processes. And then throughout their 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year, they're going to start credit checking. Grades are permanent from 9th grade. Know about any concurrent enrollment opportunities or career tech programs, internships. This is the year again for state assessments, the ACT or SAT, that's science and US history. So if a student is moving during the 11th grade year in the spring, this is going to be very critical to know about that and how those opportunities can be made up if they transition back and forth. And if they go to a different state, what type of requirements or assessments did they take in that state? And you want to make sure that that gets transferred over. So it's just having an awareness of what's going on. I highly recommend that at the senior year, end of junior year, that there is a one-on-one meeting with a counselor or a school official to review requirements, to make sure that there were no gaps held, that all records from any previous school were received, to make sure that the student gets credit for everything that they've taken. This is also a time towards the end of the junior year, the summer of the senior year, to talk about financial aid, scholarships, college application requirements, any career tech certifications they may have earned. We want students to get everything on their transcript that reflects their secondary experience before they transition to college or career. Because I, as a school counselor and a principal, I received my share of transcript requests from businesses who were trying to verify a student's graduation, and they wanted their transcript. So it had to be complete, because that is a permanent record for that student. So from roadblocks to building blocks. Just being mindful of any attendance issues that may arise to help avert those. Just notify school officials immediately if a move is pending. Do not take the student out until you actually move. I know we, students who are moving just from, say, Oklahoma City schools to Edmond, the parent will take them out and they haven't actually moved yet. And so they're missing instructional days. So as long as they can actually stay in the school until you move, that will be helpful. And then enroll in another school as soon as possible. If within the state of Oklahoma, the students do have a state testing number that is attached to them that helps find their records. So it's important to make sure that their demographic information is correct and the school enrolls them with the correct birth date. So that's one of the things that will get overlooked, and provide them with copies of any type of record that you have. It's always a good rule of thumb to have like a folder or envelope or something with current records, so that if you do have to move, it's easier to get that student enrolled based on some tangible things, instead of saying, well, I think I was in geometry, I just had math class. That doesn't help, especially if the students are in grades 10, 11, and 12. You don't want them to be enrolled in a course they've already taken. So if you have records, a copy of any type, your birth certificate records, anything that will facilitate getting the student enrolled, have your own personal copy of that. And then prepare your child for moving. I was moved around when I was younger, and you have to make new friends, and sometimes you so be mindful of that and just prepare them so they would know. Talk with your school guidance staff for some resources on how to identify any type of attitude changes that may arise from having to move. Acknowledge the challenges, but explore the possibilities. I love that because life happens, but we just have to acknowledge it and then explore what we can do. And part of that is building partnerships. So connect with your school personnel, any coaches, sponsors. Say your student was in the band and they want to stay in band. Maybe they know some connections to help get that student remained involved in those activities. And then the State Department of Education, I do have one of my colleagues who is going to come up and speak to you about some additional resources, but we are always here as a resource. And again, types of records to attain, of course, grades, any type of grades that you have, current coursework, maybe a class schedule, shot records, testing, career assessment tools. Ask your student to keep up with their login, because once they are connected with either OK College Start or OK Career Guide, that is a platform for them even beyond high school. And they can upload any type of information, that checklist I showed earlier, they can upload that in and monitor and track their own grades. And that is a very tangible way for them to be able to say, hey, once they get to the school, go to the computer lab and say, hey, counselor lady, can I show you my OK Career Guide? And she can look and see what he's or she has already done. And those are links to those sources for what the student can have those. And then I always like to add character counts because it has nice activities in it for students to build some of those other skills that employers and schools are needing our students to have. If a student needs to pursue a GED, that is out of the Department of Career Tech, the State Department of Career Tech, and they do have an adult basic education program where students can pursue a GED if that is necessary. And then of course the link to our department for any graduation requirements. And this is the link to the OK Edge site. And I wanted to show you what that was. It is new for the state, but it has a wealth of information regarding transition from high school to college and to the workforce. and information for students and families. And I'm a link person, y'all can tell. I need to get to my information like that. So here are some links to that if you need some follow-up or want to review any of that information. And these are to those two particular tools that are required that students have starting with this year's freshmen. And that is me, Petra, and I am the Executive Director of Academic Counseling, and I also put our staff in the Student Support Services Office, and their titles tell what they do. So if you need work-based learning, these are our executive directors that are housed out of our office, and we will be more than happy to connect with you and explore any of this information further if you would like. Are there any questions?
Let me pull up your chat box because I did not really do that. I don't think I haven't seen anything in there yet. No. Clean as a whistle.
Clean as a whistle. Well, that means that's good and nice and covered. Hey, that's how my students did it. It's like, you have any questions?
Cindy's coming up here. Maybe.
We have a question.
Okay.
I have a parent that would like to know how many times will the high school students have the opportunity to take the ACT or the SAT?
Well, they can actually take the assessment starting in 7th grade, early as they can. The state administers the one, which is the junior year in the spring. So that is the one for accountability purposes, but a student can take any one of those. I believe they have maybe 6 different testing dates published by ACT and SAT. Students get 2 waivers to take that test. One can be used in the junior year, one can be used the senior year, or both of them can be used in the same year, but only juniors qualify for it. So that is a way for students to be able to take the assessment without having to pay.
Do you know what the fee is for the test?
The fee is around $54 now. It's gone up quite a bit to be able to take, and that includes the writing component. And you want to make sure that students at least take the writing component once with that assessment. And at ACT.org or collegeboard.org, they have more resources for the SAT and the ACT.
Any other questions? ¿Tienen algo otras más preguntas? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Cindy.
Next on our agenda for you all, we have the next speaker, which is Blaire Harrison, a behavior specialist here at the State Department, and she's going to talk about trauma and teaching and learning and things like that. So,
I pulled up yours from the web because it looked like you were maybe making some changes, so that's what they'll be seeing. You should be able to just advance right here.
okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Blaire Harrison, and I am a behavioral specialist at the State Department, like Erin said. I work under the School Climate Transformation Grant. That is a federal grant that we received for 5 years here at the State Department. I also work in the Student Support Department with Petra under the direction of Deputy State Superintendent Dr. Shelley Ellis. The purpose of our Climate Transformation Grant is to provide professional development in areas of prevention to all 512 school districts around the state, plus to other departments like federal programs and groups like yours. And we're just a resource in this state. Today is actually World Mental Health Awareness Day, so it's appropriate that we are covering this topic of trauma today. Being trauma-informed in education is an initiative that's happening not only in our state, but it's also has an international stage. Having trauma-informed schools is using best practices for our students and addressing the whole child. And what I mean by addressing the whole child is that we know that if we can meet our children's behavioral needs first, then their academics will follow. It's important to know that the word discipline means to teach and not to punish. So therefore, having trauma-informed schools and using these trauma-informed best practices is about using restorative practices and consequences and moving away from any type of punitive discipline. If you have any questions or comments or anything, you can stop me at any time and ask, or you can save those for the end. I'm going to start out first talking about the effects of trauma and kind of what is trauma, the basics of that, and then I will move more into strategies that you can use at home. So what is trauma? Trauma is anything that changes the brain's development. Examples could be abuse, assault, natural disasters, the death of a loved one. Really anything can lead to trauma depending upon the person and the circumstance. And trauma has different effects on different people. The way trauma affects my brain is different than how it might affect your brain. You and I could be in a car wreck today and I might be able to get back into the car tomorrow and drive, and it might take you months or years even to want to be able to drive again. So we cannot judge somebody on how affected they are by a certain event. There are two types of trauma. There's acute, which stems from one specific traumatic experience, and then there's chronic trauma, that it is experiences that are happening repeatedly. Being a trauma-informed parent means that you are able to understand that an event does not have to necessarily be catastrophic in order to be traumatic to a child, and that symptoms of trauma can manifest following any highly stressful experience that causes lasting emotional or physical effects. Being a trauma-informed parent means that you are better equipped to help your child cope with and rise above trauma-related health issues or post-traumatic stress. You will be able to appreciate your child's unique temperaments by recognizing that while a location move to one child may be a bump in the road, to another child, it could be completely devastating. I'm going to make you aware of ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences, and I'll get more into detail on some of the following slides on what ACEs are. And I will let you know where you can find help should your child's ACE score warrant more attention. Also, being a trauma-informed parent means that you know or you understand that a post-traumatic stress can mimic other issues such as ADHD, emotional outbursts, body aches, isolation, social problems, and poor school performance. The current Surgeon General of California, her name is Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. She started a pediatric clinic in the community of Bayview, which is in San Francisco, and this was a community that faced a lot of adversity and didn't have like local pediatric clinics for people to take their children to. So she opened one up in this neighborhood and started having a lot of referrals on ADHD. I was like, what is going on? Not all of these children can have ADHD. So she started giving out the questionnaire for ACEs and realized they don't all have ADHD. They all have trauma in their past. Being trauma-informed also helps us to understand the effects of trauma may not reveal themselves for months or even years after an event has happened. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about ACEs, or adverse childhood experiences. The ACE study actually began in an obesity clinic in San Diego in California in 1985 with Dr. Vincent Folletti. While he was doing face-to-face interviews, well, let me give you a little bit more background. He had all these clients coming in that they were able to lose large amounts of weight, but then they were not able to sustain that, and he wanted to know why. So he started doing face-to-face interviews with his clients, and one disclosed that she had been raped as a child and stated to him that to be overweight is to be overlooked, and that's the way I need to be. So through further interviews, he found that 55% of his clients had been using addiction and negative coping skills as a response to serious childhood trauma. So these are ACEs. ACEs is a 10-question survey or questionnaire that has been put together by Dr. Folletti and Dr. Richard Onda. The questionnaire is based off of these 10 pieces, such as physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect, and then any kind of mental illness in the home. This says mother treated violently, but it could be really any sort of physical violence in the home, divorce, incarcerated relative, or substance abuse. You can find the ACEs questionnaire just by Googling it. When I'm doing a training, whether it's with teachers or teacher candidates at the university level, or even today with parents, I don't pass out the ACEs questionnaire. It can be very triggering. It can be kind of hard to see what your ACE score is, but if you would like to do that on your own time, you may look up the ACEs questionnaire. You just need to make sure that you do that in a very safe space, because it can be a trigger for some people. I personally have an ACE score of 2. I'm okay to talk about my ACE score. My parents are divorced, and there was a lot of emotional abuse and manipulation in my family, but your ACE score doesn't have to define you. We're going to talk when we get to strategies, we're going to talk about building resilience and how to overcome your ACE score. So this is an image that just shows that the more ACEs a child has, the higher at risk they are for certain behaviors. And some of those behaviors are, we'll talk about those, social, emotional, and cognitive impairment, adoption of health risk behaviors, disease, disability, and social problems, an early death. An ACE score of a 6 or higher had a lifespan reduced by as much as 20 years. And ACEs affect all races, gender, and economic statuses. Those that have a 3 or higher ACE score are considered at risk to be twice as likely to become a smoker, 7 times more likely to be an alcoholic, 10 times more likely to inject street drugs, more likely to be violent, have multiple marriages, and more drug prescriptions, more depression, more broken bones, more autoimmune diseases, and more work absences. ACEs and brain development. Those that have an ACE score, and you can have an ACE score since there are 10 pieces on that questionnaire, your ACE score can be anywhere from a 1 to a 10. They oftentimes have difficulty trusting others, building those safe relationships, social isolation, difficulty seeking help, hypersensitivity to physical contact, increased medical, emotional, and mental problems, problems with coordination and balance, poor affect regulation, problems with academic achievement, and oppositional antisocial behaviors, and difficulty planning for the future. So I want to clarify that this is not a map of ACEs in Oklahoma. This is just a map of health factors across the state. The darker blue areas have some of the highest ACEs scores in the nation, though. The lighter area has more access to services. So you'll notice kind of around like the Oklahoma City area, around the Tulsa area, there's more access to mental health services. Out in eastern Oklahoma, this is where the most dense population is of our state. And then out in western Oklahoma, it is lighter because we have a much higher transient population. So data is a little bit harder to track, and the population is much smaller compared to that of eastern Oklahoma. ACEs in Oklahoma. So as a teacher, it is safe to assume that about 45% of students sitting in a classroom have an ACE score. We have some of the highest ACE scores in the nation, and Oklahoma has the highest percentage of youth experiencing 4 or more ACEs. And I'm going to read off a few stats to you. Oklahoma has some of the highest rates of mental health disorders in the country, and the children who live here are more likely to not receive care for those conditions. It was recently found in a study that Oklahoma is one of the bottom 4 states in adolescent mental health care. We have some of the highest poverty rates, we have very high substance abuse rates, and there's a lack of resources. Oklahoma is 1 or 2 in the nation for high domestic violence rates. We have high divorce rates. We have some of the highest incarceration rates. We have the highest incarceration rate of females in the world. And another interesting stat is that, like most parents, we all want to do what's best for our students. And so I'm going to tell you that I had moved my family to the Philippines 2 years ago for an opportunity to teach internationally. And the Philippines is a third world country. The life expectancy in the Philippines is about 69 years old. But going back to this map, talking about Eastern Oklahoma, there is a city out in Eastern Oklahoma, or a town in Eastern Oklahoma, where the life expectancy is 57 years old. So we have life expectancies in our state, in our country, that compare to that of a third world country, or lower than what we think of as a third world country. And I wanted to bring that to light because I think sometimes we don't consider that. We think as the US that we have all of these opportunities, but really we have people that are really struggling. Intergenerational trauma. It can be passed down through changes in genes. We know that parents pass down genetic traits to their children, but life experiences that have altered or that can alter chemical makeup of genes are also passed down. So these events could be something like forced removal of Native Americans by the government, forced removal on the Hispanic community, loss of cultural identity for minorities, being forced to conform or assimilate to a European American culture, distrust of the government. Any kind of large-scale traumatic event can cause trauma. As far as textbooks go, we're realizing more and more that when a student from a diverse background opens up a book, they find a European American history because it was written by a European American. The history that diverse students see about their ancestors in textbooks is not always presented in a positive light. The history of slavery makes African Americans appear that they were a lost culture, but in reality, these people have and had a rich history and culture that was taken away from them. Our Latinx students are being strongly affected by what we see happening at our southern border and with the politics in this country. As parents and educators, it is our job to bring in the cultures and histories to light to our children and our students that reflect their backgrounds and are relatable to them to build these inclusive communities in our schools. I'm going to share some new data that I just got in the last month on trauma in youth. This first stat that I'm going to show you is on attention. We know that trauma impacts a child's ability to pay attention. They become very hypervigilant or hypersensitive to changes in environments. They are aware of adults' behavioral changes in an environment, and they become overly concerned about threats. So the orange are the children that were affected by trauma. Blue is children with no trauma. But I think it is important for us to notice how high some of these stats are, even for the children that we don't think have trauma. So this says kids that are easily distracted, about 70% affected by trauma said that they are easily distracted. And about 52% not affected by trauma say they are easily distracted. And then about 67% of trauma affected children say they have trouble concentrating at school, whereas about 47% without trauma say they have trouble concentrating. Oops. This one is based off mood. Children exposed to trauma experience intense emotions. They oftentimes don't have the skills to identify their emotions, and they use intense emotions. Those intense emotions become their new normal. So through our grant, we have purchased social emotional curriculums for our schools that help the kids to identify and teach them some of these skills to understand the emotions that they're experiencing. So about 77% of trauma-affected kids say they worry a lot. And about 63% of non-trauma affected children say they worry a lot. So I think even the kids that are not affected by trauma, it's very concerning how high these stats are for them. These are based off conduct. Kids that are experiencing trauma are often in a flight, fight, or freeze. It says fighting the bear, and that refers back to Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris that I talked about, who opened the pediatric clinic in San Francisco. We talk about when you're in a forest, and if you are faced with a bear in a forest, your cortisol levels in your brain raise, and you go into your limbic brain or your brainstem, and you're in that survival mode, and you're in flight, fight, or freeze. You're always in that high alert. But for new learning to take place, you need those cortisol levels to come back down, and you need to be in your neocortex or your frontal brain. For children that are constantly affected by trauma, they are staying in that flight, fight, or freeze. And we've learned through research that the longer those cortisol levels are raised in the brain, the harder it is to get them to come back down. The world can feel very unpredictable and unsafe, and negative emotions can lead to internal and external behavioral problems. So about 64% said that they feel hopeless, and then about 65% said that they feel that they are the bad kid. The trauma of moving. Moving is a loss to a child. It can have a similar response to the loss of a loved one. It can disrupt any important friendships or relationships that the child has built up. And it can cause high anxiety, especially for those that have introvert personalities. Moving is tough on kids. Kids struggle to build new meaningful relationships. Kids that move often tend to score lower in well-being and life satisfaction. Moving can cause a lot of family stress within the home. And moving often can affect children into their adulthood. Moving often in childhood can reduce lifespan as well, and it can create more stress, and stress, just like trauma, leads to ill effects on health. So, like I said in one of my previous slides, we moved internationally 2 years ago, and our intentions was that my husband and I are both in education, and we wanted to be able to provide, like most parents do, better opportunities to our children, things that we were not able to do as teachers here in the state. So we thought we were providing this great opportunity to our children by exposing them to new cultures and countries, giving them all these great experiences. And we did some amazing things, but that move also brought on some very high stress in our family and a lot of struggles. I have 3 little boys. My middle son has a sensory processing disorder and very high levels of anxiety with that. So we saw extreme changes in his behaviors when we moved internationally. And so we started using some of the strategies that I'm going to share with you today. And I'll be more specific with exactly what I use with him when I get to those. But moving is tough on kids. It's very hard on kids. And I saw that in my own family. So I thought I was doing what was best for my child, but it really had a strong effect on him. So how can we help our children? These are going to be strategies for you to use. We are not born with resilience. It is not inherently in us. It has to be built up. Parents, teachers, and caregivers can help children by gaining an understanding of ACEs, which is what we just went through, knowing you don't have to be defined by your ACEs score, creating home environments where children feel safe emotionally and physically, and helping children identify feelings and manage their emotions. Fostering hope and resilience. Resilience is being able to bounce back from any sort of negative event in your life. Hope is wanting more out of your life. We know that people that have a higher hope often do better in life than people with lower hope. Being able to believe in yourself and others, being able to believe in your future. Hope scores are more of a predictor of college success than SAT or ACT scores. Students who are low hope are usually the first students who are kicked out of school. Higher hope kids have a greater influence on lower hope kids, and peer mentoring groups work in increasing hope. going back to believing in the future, oftentimes kids struggle to see past the event that's happening in that moment or in that day in their life. It's hard for them to see a tomorrow or to build a future. So we need to keep that in mind as adults, that we have to show them that there is a future, there is a path for them. So this is called PACEs, and PACEs are basically a 180 from ACEs. There's a PACEs quiz, which I have linked here. PACEs is protective and compensatory experiences. So the PACEs questionnaire asks you questions that will help you build resilience or help you show that there are good things coming in your life that you can overcome your ACEs. So it asks questions like, do you have someone who loved you unconditionally? Do you have at least one best friend? Do you do things regularly to help others or do special projects in the community to help others? Do you have an adult other than a parent that you trust and can count on for advice? Are you a member of at least one social group or a non-sport group? And then here's the rest. Do you have at least one engaging hobby? Are you regularly involved in organized sports groups or other physical activity? Do you live in a home that was typically clean and safe with enough food to eat? Do you have a school that provided you the resources and experiences you needed to learn? And were the rules in your home or school clear and fairly administered? When you have a child that is affected by trauma that is triggered by something, becomes dysregulated or goes into a meltdown situation, it's always important to allow that child to de-escalate and regulate back before problem solving. So I was talking about those cortisol levels risen in the brain. No new learning can take place. You cannot move forward from the issue at hand until that child is regulated and back into their neocortex, or the frontal brain. Some good ways you can help your child or through validation and response. All children respond to a traumatic event in a different manner. So when a situation happens at school that day that they come home and they're very upset about, just listen with empathy, understand their unique perspective, validate their feelings. They are allowed all the feelings they want. As adults, we don't like to be told how we are feeling, and so we cannot do that to our children. And we need to help our children identify their emotions and respond with understanding and empathy. So if you have a child that comes home that's upset from something that day, an example of validation would be, it seems like you're feeling angry. Acknowledge that situation and acknowledge that it's upsetting for your child. Or, I know that it's frustrating to stop playing that game to be able to come to dinner. Let them know that you're willing to help them with the problem once they are calm and regulated. When a child feels validated, they're more likely to hear or listen to you, change their behaviors. It helps to build up that relationship between you and your child. It helps to build your child's self-esteem, and it will improve the overall emotional health of the child. So through the ACEs study, it has been found that there's one common thing that can help any child overcome those ACEs. And that one intervention is having a safe relationship. So they can have a relationship at home with their parent, but then also for your child to be able to identify a safe relationship with a caregiver or a teacher at the school building. I'm going to show you this short video. This is by Brené Brown. It's on empathy versus sympathy, and it's a funny little video, but it does a great job of showing you how empathy and validating of feelings can drive connections between you and your child, and how just being sympathetic can drive disconnection.
Let's see, before you show, change one setting, and I'm not sure they'll be able to hear it.
Okay, we don't have to use it.
We'll see. For our guests out there, we're going to try a video here. I think you'll hear it over your computer if you have your computer sound hooked up. Let's see what happens. Whoop, I didn't mean for it to disappear.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
I think that video does a good job of driving home that your child needs a close connection, or that one safe relationship is what can help us overcome some of those ACE scores and some of the trauma or issues that our children are facing. Some coping strategies or de-escalation strategies that you can use with your kids when they are dysregulated. Breathing techniques such as visualizing colors with focused breathing. You can do rise and fall breathing, and these are all links that you are more than welcome to use. I will share this presentation with Erin to send out to everybody. Shape breathing, dragon breathing, and then using bubbles. So dragon breathing is where you have your child take an extremely deep breath and then blow it out like a dragon would, or getting bubbles and having them blow bubbles. Color breathing is visualizing a certain color. So like blue helps, if you think of the color blue, it's relaxing and peaceful. It helps clear your mind. Green is healing and balancing. It improves your thoughts. Magenta can bring on release and help you let go of negative thoughts. Orange brings on fun, happiness, and joy and uplifts your mood. And then red is for energy and vitality and increased strength and energy. Shape breathing, and the link to this, they have all different shapes and types of shape breathing. I just put 2 on here. So like star shape breathing is where your child would put their finger at one point of the star, they would breathe in, they get up here, they'd hold, they're tracing this with their finger. Breathe out, breathe in, hold, breathe out. And then lazy 8 breathing is where they start here. They can breathe in, breathe in, breathe in. They're tracing this with their finger. Breathe out, breathe out, breathe out. Setting up a safe space. In schools, we're suggesting that a school has a calming corner, whether it's in the counseling office or in the classroom. We also call these regulation stations. It's a comfy space, bean bags, kind of pillows propped up in there. There's music to listen to if the child wants to, books for them to read. And then we recommend putting like a glitter jar in there where you shake up the glitter jar and then the child just watches all the glitter fall and collect down at the bottom. It's very calming and relaxing. Bubbles again, Play-Doh, anything that they can kind of fidget with or manipulate with. Movement is a great de-escalation technique, whether it's dancing, rocking, pacing, sitting and standing exercises. Yoga is great. Identifying emotions through the zones of regulation. You help a child find their zone, and then this is a great method to use to discuss emotions and help identify feelings. So zones of regulation at home, there are 4 zones. These can be used with kids of any age. You can change the wording to fit a younger child up through a child that's in secondary school. It's very user-friendly. It helps your child identify emotions. You're showing interest in learning what your child's triggers are, what are things that set them off or dysregulate them, and teaching them calming strategies. So there's 4 zones. There's blue zone, green zone, yellow zone, red zone. So blue is sad, sick, hurt, tired. Green, you're good to go. They're happy, they're calm, they're ready to learn. Yellow, they're getting their engine revved a little bit. They're frustrated, they're worried, they're becoming anxious. And then red, their lid is flipped. They are gone. They are upset, they are dysregulated, they are mad, angry. When you use zones of regulation at home, you could make a poster together as a family of the 4 zones. You can create a zone toolbox. You can share with the child how his or her behavior is affecting the zone that you are in. And you can ask, is this a small or big problem? So some of the tools that I use zones of regulation with my middle son that I was referring to earlier. And some of the tools that we have made for him are we have just a paper stoplight that he colored on paper, and it doesn't have blue, but it has red, yellow, and green. And so he can go over to it and he can tell me, you know, he's feeling red. And so I know what that means. Or I typically know when he's in a red zone anyways, because he's definitely dysregulated and in total meltdown at that point. You can, I also used the term a minute ago, engine revving. So I can say to him, is your engine getting revved? I think you're going from yellow to red. Or I like this one right here that says, share with the child how his behavior is affecting the zone you are in. So I can say to my child, you are revving my engine. I'm going to walk away from you for a few minutes before we both get upset here. And he knows exactly what that means. And then asking, is this a small or big problem? You can also change the wording on that to where a smaller child would understand it. So we have a poster that I made that says, is this a mouse problem? Is this a dog problem? Or is this an elephant problem? And it has the visual on there to help the child understand, no, this is not really that big of a deal. I should not be getting my engine revved over this situation. And then here's some other ideas to build up a toolbox. For blue zone tools, stretching, resting, listening to music, talking it out. Green zone, drinking water, reading, healthy eating, riding, exercising again. Yellow zone tools, talking to someone, deep breathing, taking a break, talking about the size of the problem. Red zone, talking to someone, listening to music, talking about the size of the problem, using those breathing techniques. So these are all, I think, simple things that can be done at home. So in summary, I hope you learned today that trauma can cause changes in children's behavior. It can impact the health and well-being of a child and family. And with understanding and support, a child and family members can heal and thrive. And I wanted to leave you with talking about self-care. I think as adults, parents, educators, we often put others ahead of ourselves and we forget to take care of us. And we cannot serve from an empty vessel. So we need to make sure that we are doing something for us, taking some time to take care of ourselves, and then we can be better for our children. Thank you so much for your time today. Here's my contact information. If you have any questions, or if you have any questions you want to ask right now, please go right ahead.
Yeah, you want to go to the website? Okay. It's coming, it's coming. It's almost there.
Great, thank you. Thank you to our guest speakers, Petra and Blaire, for the interesting topics and information that was presented today. We appreciate your time and energy on these topics for our families. I just wanted to really briefly go show you in particular, where the Title I-C, which is Migrant Education, webpage is located, where you could possibly get some resources for your family and for your area. And then also just in general show you where their team's programs are as well. So under services, in particular, federal programs is the office that I work in Jose. So you're going to click that. And then over here on the right under Title I, because migrant funds are Title I funds, we are Title I Part C, which it says Education of Migratory Children. So you're going to click on that. And this is our webpage. So again, it goes over the intent and purpose. And then if you'll scroll on down, you get law and guidance, forms and tools, and then webinars and resources. So any webinar that we have, we are updating this. We just did update and overhaul, Jose and I, our webpage to get the newest information on there for you, most current. And so any new webinars that we've been having this school year and of course of today, will be added on to this webinar section for you all. And as you look through any links on here, we tried to go through and make sure that they were all current and they worked and took off the old stuff. But if there's any other resources or things like that that you feel that would be helpful to the parents in your area, please let me know. And we would be glad to research that and possibly put it on our webpage for you guys. We also wanted to let you know about the spring state PAC meeting video conference. The speaker that we have for the spring lined up is Jorge Martinez with Oro Development Corporation. And that would be April 29th at 10 o'clock. He will be presenting on his about the resources that he can offer regionally in our state for migrant and Title I-C workers and their families. Is there any questions from today's presentations before we dismiss?
I just checked.
No? Okay. And so I think that we would have do you want to talk? Yeah. Could the president then, if there's not any questions or anything like that, close out the meeting for today, please? Is the president still available? Or the vice president? Or the secretary? Or any? Okay. Well, I guess maybe they had to go. So we thank you for your time today. And like I say, if you have any questions or anything, we're here for you. And I will be posting the presentations today on our website on the page that I showed you. Thank you. Have a good day.